After our first house fire, we made decisions that we thought were right in the moment, but looking back, some of those decisions were completely wrong. Not because we were careless, but because we were exhausted, overwhelmed, and trying to get through something we'd never experienced before. I want to say this clearly right at the beginning. Most of the mistakes people make after a fire are not because they're making bad choices. They're happening because your brain is under stress, your environment's unstable, and everything suddenly feels urgent. When you combine those things, you try to problem solve quickly, and that's exactly what causes a lot of the problems we're going to talk about in this video. What's different now is that we've been through this twice, and the second time we saw everything much more clearly. So what I want to do in this video is walk through the biggest mistakes we made the first time, not just what they were, but why we made them, and how we handled those situations differently the second time. Because if you're going through this right now, this is where you can save yourself a lot of time, stress, and in some cases, a significant amount of money. Before we start, if you've been watching us and find this information helpful, welcome back. If you're new here, thanks for checking us out. Scott and I have been through 2 house fires. They were both very different from each other, and our insurance policies were different. We have this channel to help you avoid the mistakes we made and make better choices for you and your family as you navigate this process.
One of the hardest parts of a house fire is that you're making important decisions in a state that's not normal for you. You're not thinking clearly the way you normally would. You're not operating with your usual routines, your usual energy, or your usual perspective. You're tired, displaced, and dealing with insurance contractors, logistics, and loss. All of that at the same time happening is a big stressor. And what happens in that environment is that you start making decisions just to move things forward, not because they're the best decisions, but because they reduce immediate pressure. So if you hear yourself in some of those mistakes, please recognize it's just part of the reality of someone going through something like this. The goal of this video is not to say we should have done everything perfectly. The goal is to help you recognize where slowing down, asking a question, or waiting even a few days could change the outcome in a really meaningful way. The first mistake we made was going back to the house too soon. After a fire, you want to get back inside as quickly as possible. You want to see what's there, what's damaged, what survived. You want to understand exactly what happened, and there's also this emotional pull. It's your home. You don't want to be kept away from it, but what we didn't understand at the time is that a fire scene is not a safe environment, even after the fire is out. There's soot in the air, and that soot is not just dirt. It can contain toxic compounds and burning materials. There can be structural issues that aren't obvious, electrical systems can be compromised, and surfaces that look stable may not be. And none of that is visible in a way that makes you stop and think, I shouldn't be here. So we went in too early, and looking back, that decision didn't give us anything useful. It didn't change the outcome. It didn't help with the whole process. What it did do was expose us to an environment that we didn't fully understand. If I could go back in time, I would want to say that I would just stay out of the house, but that's not true. I would still do what we did the second time. We'd wear Tyvek suits and respirators and take my phone and catch a quick video of the kind of conditions. And then we'd step back and let the professionals assess everything. Then after that, I would wait until we actually needed to be inside for a specific purpose, not just to satisfy that initial emotional pull or curiosity. The urge to go back and immediately is emotion, not strategy.
Yeah, I think we were able to do that second fire better because we actually had some Tyvek suits left from the first time in the garage, so we grabbed that and used them. I don't know that if we hadn't had them there, we would have used them. We probably would have just went back in, even though that's not safe, and that is our advice to actually swing by the store, grab some Tyvek suits. They're inexpensive. They're at all the big home stores.
And make sure the emergency responders have cleared the scene for you to go back in as well.
Yeah. The second mistake we made is one that took us longer to recognize, and it's something I think a lot of homeowners don't fully understand when they're going through this for the first time, and that's the restoration process. Restoration companies are brought in to clean and recover items after a fire, and in many cases that's incredibly valuable. There are things that can absolutely be saved, clothing, furniture, certain household items. But what we didn't understand is that not everything should be restored. There's a difference between something technically being restorable and something actually being worth restoring. And we saw that play out very clearly with items like children's artwork. We had drawings, projects, things that had been heavily affected by smoke. And instead of those items being written off, they were cleaned, processed, and restored. At the time, we didn't question it. We did not think they would actually clone children's drawings, reframe them, and put on professional backings. We assumed that if it was being done, it was being done with the right approach. When we got them back, we were shocked at the waste of money that was billed to the claim. This billing process really matters because if an item is written off instead of restored, that can open a door to a different type of settlement. In some cases, that means you receive a portion of the value directly rather than the insurance company paying to restore something that doesn't meaningfully improve your situation. By the second fire, we understood this. We were very clear about certain items. We said directly, these should not be restored. We would like to be offered a settlement. Unfortunately, and even then, we ran into issues where those instructions weren't followed the way we had asked for. The restoration company will make a lot of money cleaning and framing your artwork. They are highly motivated to do so. So the lesson here is not that the restoration companies are bad, it's that you need to stay aware of what's being restored, ask whether it makes sense, and follow up with the company. When we got everything back the second time, we had clearly asked to be offered a settlement. We didn't know it was being done. They didn't tell us, and that was intentional. This is one of those areas where decisions are being made quickly, and if you are not paying attention, the outcome may not align with what's best for you financially.
The third mistake we made was replacing things too early. And this one seems harmless at first. You're living in a rental, you're trying to get organized, and you're thinking ahead and to moving back into your home. So you start buying things. Items you know you'll need, things that feel practical, things that make you feel like you're making progress. And we did a lot of that. We bought items and stored them in the rental, household goods, things we thought would make transition easier later. But what we didn't realize is that we were creating a second logistical system on top of an already complex situation. When it came time to move back, we now had two locations to manage, the house and the rental. We were driving back and forth, moving items multiple times, trying to keep track of what was where, and all of that added stress to a moment that was already demanding. What we learned the second time is that timing matters more than a preparation. It's not about getting things early, it's about getting them at the right time. The second time we waited, and when we did purchase items, we timed them to arrive right before we moved back in. That one change simplified everything. We also used a credit card point strategy to maximize our opportunity for future travel. If you haven't seen that video yet, please watch it. It is where you're going to start to see how this experience can change your life. Now, mistake number 4 was one of the mistakes that was the most challenging to figure out, and it had to do with our pets. And in this situation, we didn't think about it until we were in it. During a fire, everything is chaotic. Doors are open, and people are moving quickly, alarms are going off, and your home is suddenly full of unfamiliar activity. Animals don't understand what's happening during this situation. They react, they run or hide, and you don't know where they are. That added a completely different layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. We were dealing with the fire, the damage, the displacement, and now we were also trying to find our pets. We knew they were both in the house, but we knew we needed to find them for their safety. Looking back, there were simple things we could have done that would have made the situation much easier.
Another thing we realized after the fire is that most homes are not actually prepared for fires in a practical way. We all think we are. We have a smoke detector, maybe a small fire extinguisher, but when you really think about what would help in those first few moments, most homes are missing key tools. After the first fire, we made some changes. We added fire blankets, especially in the kitchen, something simple but incredibly effective for small fires. We upgraded our extinguishers to much bigger units, not just having them, but placing them where they're actually accessible. We have escape ladders in every upstairs room, and we added a fire-resistant safe for important documents. Not because we expect to need it a third time, but because we understand the value of having it. These are small things, but they shift you from being reactive to being prepared. One of the firefighters talked with us after our second fire and recognized we could not have saved our house if our extinguishers were the typical small size and if we'd not reached them so fast. He told us all his extinguishers were small and he was going to go home and order new, bigger ones that day. The small fire extinguishers are honestly not going to do much once the fire has grown. They're good for a fire on your stovetop, but honestly, that's about it. Fire spreads way too rapidly for them to be effective.
One thing we didn't fully understand until we went through this is just how fast modern house fires actually move. There's a common assumption that you'll have time to notice, react, grab things, but that assumption is based on how fires behaved decades ago, not how they behave today.
Modern homes burn very differently than homes did in the past. A lot of that has to do with the materials inside of them. Furniture today is filled with synthetic materials, plastics, foams, treated fabrics, and those materials burn hotter and faster than natural materials did.
In the 1970s, people typically had around 15 to 20 minutes to recognize a fire and get out safely. Today, that window has shrunk dramatically. In many cases, you may only have about 3 to 5 minutes before a fire becomes fully developed.
That is not a lot of time, and that's why early awareness matters so much.
Another thing that surprised us is that even when smoke alarms are present, people often notice a fire before the alarm goes off. According to the National Fire Protection Association, in about 60% of fires where a smoke alarm is installed, a person actually detects the fire first and raises the alarm.
Yeah, we slept through our first house fire. We slept through the alarm, even though it was outside our bedroom door. And the second fire started on the outside of the house, and the smoke alarm never went off during the whole fire. That doesn't mean smoke alarms aren't important. They absolutely are, and we have more of them in our house than most people think are reasonable. But it does highlight something important.
You cannot rely on having time, and you cannot rely on things unfolding slowly.
Yeah. And without a working smoke alarm, fires can go unnoticed until they're already developed, sometimes even visible from outside the home.
And by that point, you're already in a much more dangerous situation. You will find some of the items we use to keep our home safe below. You might find our preparations a little excessive. After 2 house fires, just really understanding the risk and feeling much safer about being prepared is important.
Yep. The last mistake we'll talk about is more of a mindset. We believed that the company whose product caused the fire would care. We thought there'd be some level of responsibility, some level of acknowledgement, and that did not happen. They treated it as a technical issue, a supplier issue, something to distance themselves from. And that was difficult because in these situations, we're already dealing with loss, and now we're realizing that accountability was not going to look the way we expected. What we learned from that is simple. You cannot rely on that. You focus on what you can control, and sometimes that control is as simple as deciding where you spend your money in the future. And we did not backtalk the company. We generally don't even mention the brand name of the product because we just need to move on from that.
If there's one thing we would say after going through this twice, it's this. You don't have to get everything right, but you do want to slow down where you can.
Because most of our mistakes after both fires didn't come from our bad intentions, they came from stress and urgency.
And when you reduce that stress and urgency even a little bit, you make better decisions.
In the next video, we're going to talk about something that affects almost every part of the process, what it actually feels like to be displaced from your home.
If these videos help, please like and subscribe.